Vanakkam and welcome to the Indulge-Express podcast. Today we have a very interesting person with us. With me sitting right here is Hakuei Kosato, popularly known as Harry-san. Harry-san is very interestingly the cultural ambassador, the goodwill ambassador for food in India. And he told me that he's been here 17 years. Now that's a very long time to be here. Harry-san, if I may call you that.
For sure.
So tell me, how has it been as a goodwill ambassador for Japanese food in India? And you have spent longer than most Japanese people. So how has been your experience of being in India?
So, first of all, thank you so much for the honor. It's a delight, and I'm so grateful to be here today to speak with you. I've been here now 17 years, and obviously that's quite a long time. But let me start by saying, in Japan we have a saying, you need at least 3 years for some business or something to happen. And I think India is not like that. The ex-chairman of Suzuki Maruti told me, Harry-san, 15 years it will take for you. That was told when I was in my 8th year. And I had thought 3 years, it was 5 years, and it's an incredible journey for me. But because I love India, and I'm so privileged to be in your country. And obviously, as you know, it's very exciting, very energetic. There's so many things happening, but it's also not easy, if I may say. But the road less traveled is obviously what makes life very interesting. But I have been the Japanese cuisine goodwill ambassador since December 2022. So that's a relatively recent official appointment by the Japanese government. But I've been always trying to promote Japan and Japanese food, Japanese ingredients, Japanese culture. And it's a joy to be able to see more and more of Japan being seen in India. And I see a lot of people, I think you've been to Japan, you said 17 times, and I think a lot of my friends have started to go to Japan. I think it's a hot word right now. And I think, obviously Japan has a lot to learn from India, but India can also learn a lot from Japan.
Absolutely. So over these 17 years, have you seen a change coming? Like you just mentioned that a lot more people are traveling. But let's talk in terms of food, because you are the goodwill ambassador for food. So have you seen that change happening where, let's say, Japanese food has become more accepted in India? Japanese food is, because the Indian palate is very different from the Japanese palate because we use a lot of spices, and which Japan does not do, except maybe for the frying this thing. But other than that, do you see an acceptance of Japanese food in India over the last few years that you've been here?
So it's also a very interesting question, because when I first came, or even before I came, and I had this vision of doing sushi in India. So my friends in Japan, were like, Harry-san, India is vegetarianism. How can you do this? India it don't happen in India. Now, you see, everything is very clear, as I think Steve Jobs says. You can connect the dots backwards, but you can never connect the dots forward. But actually, 17 years ago, people didn't like the idea of sushi at all in India. How can you serve, raw fish to us?
Yes.
But obviously, everything evolves, and everything evolves to, I think, obviously there are a lot of challenges in the world politically, and if you look at what's happening, there's a lot of challenges, worldwide. But I think everything evolves toward the positive, and actually, a lot of people now are really enjoying sushi. Now, we, for example, so I have a few hats, and goodwill ambassador is one of them. We have Jain sushi, for example.
Oh, really? How does that work?
Veg sushi, yeah. So the thing is, what people thought sushi was only fish. It is not the case. You can have different types of fish, including Jain sushi, which is actually very popular. In fact, 50% of the sushi that we serve is vegetarian. And so that might surprise you. So what I'm trying to say is that, everything is possible. It just takes time. As far as also kikoman is concerned, like without kikoman soy sauce, you really can't cook a Japanese meal. So I mean, ingredients have also started to come into the country. But I like to use this example, like everybody says it's the sushi boom in India or the Japanese food boom in India. But sir, do you know how many Japanese restaurants there are in India?
I don't know.
Less than 200. But you see, a lot of people say, Harrison, you came to India because of the Japanese food boom. Not really. I came to India because of the population, of the potential of doing business, not only in food, but different things, right? Now I ask the question, how many Japanese restaurants are there in China? 80,000.
80,000.
That's a 400x difference. And even the 200 restaurants I called, serving Japanese, not all of them are serving only Japanese food. It's 50% of Japanese food. So this huge gap, okay? Obviously, India has now eclipsed China in terms of population. But there's a long way to go, you see. But obviously, 17 years, we've come a long way. But the road further is actually much longer. And it's actually three things: better ingredients, more awareness, people traveling overseas, looking on the internet, challenging themselves and cooking at home, right? Awareness. And the third thing is really entrepreneurs like us. How do we actually, or even Indian entrepreneurs or foreigners or whoever in India, how do we create what has been created in China? Japanese food is still at its nascency, at the beginning, I would say.
Okay. But I would like to go a little personal here. Sure. So my personal question to you is, how did your interest in food evolve, and how has it evolved over a period of time that you took this step of, let's say, coming to a place like India, which, like you compared with China, the gap is rather large. So what really evolved your passion in food, and what was your journey into India?
So I think, I'm first and foremost a foodie. I love my food, right? And I think one of the things that people don't realize is when we were kids, sushi was like a once a year or twice a year affair.
Oh.
We had to get dressed to go to a sushi restaurant.
It was an event.
Yes, it was a celebration. You had to sit in front of the counter. The sushi master would serve you whatever you wanted. And it was one of those, as a child, 8, 9, 10 years old, 11 years old, going to sushi was one of those highlights of a year. Now, as you know, now you can get it on a Zomato or Swiggy. You can get it 4 times the sushi if you want, a day, But my passion for sushi is actually, I wanted to eat sushi in India, because it wasn't available, right? And I like creating markets. I like creating things which doesn't exist. And I actually, if I may say, specialize in doing difficult things. Because difficult things very few people do, right? Now, when I said, okay, I want to eat sushi, yeah, you could do it at home where you cook your sushi, whatever. But since I say, if I want to have sushi, that must mean that other people want to have sushi, right? So I said, rather than be selfish and do it for me, I should sort of do it for others, and let them enjoy. So last year, in 2023, the end of financial year, we served 120,000 sushi meals in a year, which actually in a country of 1.4 billion, who cares, right? But in the height of the pandemic, we were thinking about stopping our business because it's very tough, rent, the fact that, staff couldn't go home. There's all these issues that we had. But that was when we realized this is the time we should never give up. And we started innovating. I went into the kitchen, started to create dishes I had been, as a child eating. And so our sales doubled, actually.
Oh.
And also, when I thought about quitting, and this I have to give great kudos to my wife. My wife is, Harrison, everything will pass. And everybody will like Japanese. The trend of Japanese food worldwide is incredible. There's a roaring trend, everywhere. When you go to, I was in Georgia, or I was in Dubai, or I was in Paris. I was in Myanmar, I was in Bangkok, I was in Singapore. Japanese food is the rage. How could it not happen in India? Was the initial motivation. But even after this pandemic, my wife said, everything will come to pass. And now everything has to come to pass. And now sushi is such a big thing. But also the potential is very, very big. It's just that people don't yet know it's possible to do Jain sushi, veg sushi, Even the ingredients that we are having in India is still maybe one thousandth of what is available, say, in Japan.
I see. And since we are talking about Japanese food here, and we have Indian food here, which is of course this thing. Any place you remember, or any instance you remember where Japanese food and Indian food have blended together and created something magical?
So that's a very good question. It's always very difficult to mix two cuisines. I have a feeling that usually it's 80% of one cuisine and 20% of the other. I think it's very difficult to do a 50-50, right? So, it's very difficult because I don't really find that sort of. I do go out at so many restaurants, etc. But I think if I take this example of sushi and more, it's actually adding that sort of kick, that spice, for example, with sriracha sauce, for example, right? To a dish which is maybe a prawn tempura roll, where you add a little bit mayonnaise, a little bit sriracha, which is the Indian bit, which is the 10-20% bit, if you know what I mean. If you go too far, I don't think it actually does justice to the cuisine that you're serving, if I may say. And it's I have seen people trying to do this 50% India, 50% Japan, but I don't think it works.
Okay. But in that same note, do you find that there are misconceptions about Japanese food in India?
I think, you see, and you will be the first to know this as a journalist, there is so little that we know for everything. Knowledge is like this, experience is also like this. There's 195 countries in the world. How many have we been to, right? I may have been to 40, right? So the body of knowledge and body of experience is actually relatively small. Yes, there's a lot of learnings and a lot of recent understandings what sushi is, what Japanese food is, what Japanese culture is, with the internet, with the YouTube, people going overseas and coming to Japan. But still, I think it's still a very, very much a small part of what, you ask somebody, do you know about sushi? They say yes. But it's actually it's a much deeper story about sushi. The way it's made, the temperature it's kept at, the temperature of your hand, the temperature of your... It's a lot of detail, actually, And the fact is sushi used to be a fast food. People don't know that, So people think, you go to a very expensive restaurant, have sushi. I wanted to bring affordable sushi to India.
Okay.
Because I did for me, right? I actually, when I go to my sushi and more outlet, I pay for my sushi, because I want it to be affordable so that I could enjoy it on a regular basis. Okay, you might go for a $400 meal in Dubai to my friend's restaurant, Nobu. Yeah, my friend, he's a nice friend, a good friend of mine. I used to, I'm actually also a journalist also. So I also write articles, and I wrote the first piece of him being on a cruise ship serving sushi. This is about 15 years ago. I took a cruise with Nobu-san from Istanbul to Athens. It was amazing. And, he was cooking. He was doing his sushi workshops on the cruise. But that's 15 years ago. Food has evolved so much. There's so many Nobu restaurants around the world. But what I'm saying is I love Nobu, but I can't afford to go every week, right? Sometimes, as I had as a child, one of those rare moments once a year. But sushi is so good that I want to democratize it. I want to make sure that people have it as much as possible, enjoy it. We have people ordering once a week, twice a week.
Nobu has been promoted by America more than anyone else. Yes. But you're right, it's very expensive to go to an establishment like that. But sushi has to be more affordable. But do you think that there are any key ingredients or cooking techniques? For example, you have a tempura style of cooking, you have other this thing. So, do you think that there are ingredients and techniques in Japanese food which can be embraced more in India?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think one is that you know, the amount of Japanese ingredients, starting with kikkoman soy sauce, for example, or say vinegar, Japanese vinegar, or Japanese rice, these have started to become mainstream, if I may say. But there's so many ingredients which are not here, right? As I said, maybe 999 ingredients are not there, right? But when it comes to bringing Japanese ingredients, I think you can use Japanese ingredients to cook Indian food. That's, I think, quite interesting. But I think it's more the cooking techniques. And I like this way of explaining that. A lot of people say Japanese food is about subtraction, whereas Indian food is about addition, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think India can learn about subtraction, and the Japanese can also learn a little bit about addition.
Give and take.
Give and take, yeah. And I think this subtraction is also very important, because what Japanese cuisine, I think, is trying to do is play on the seasonality of the food. Don't overcook it, just maybe blanch it. Well, obviously sashimi, just have it, raw, which is the simplicity bit. Whereas Indian food, in my understanding, is more involved, is more rich, more intense, more deeper nuances, maybe heavier also, but also the delight that it gives you as a food, the umami of Indian food is obviously very much there, if you know what I mean. But I think there is that kind of confluence and learning of techniques that each chef or each person in one's household can experiment. And that's the beauty of food, no? Is that you experiment.
True. So when you brought sushi, let's say more affordable for the masses into India, what are the kind of challenges you faced? Did the market accept you as it is, or did you have to, like you said, during the pandemic, you were really wondering as to should you carry on or not? So, what are some of the challenges that you faced? In this?
So, I mean, it's full of challenges. Staffing is a problem, in a sense that somehow we have become, Sushi More has become, okay, if you have been trained at Sushi More for 6 months, you might be able to get the double the salary at a different establishment. That's the competition. Staffing is one. We have issues about, initially we had issues about hygiene. The mentality of hygiene is completely different when it is coming to Japanese levels of hygiene. But now we have operationalized all of that, where the culture is of making sure that we get the food right, the quality right, the temperature right, all of that. Because we have professional chefs, obviously. But it's not only the fact that they're professional, that because they have an understanding. So my head chef's been to Japan, he understands the Japanese culture, the Japanese levels of hygiene. Staffing, hygiene. I think ingredients also. Because if you want to be affordable, you can't be serving otoro, which is, is a fatty tuna, which is incredibly expensive.
True.
And that's not something that one would want to have on an affordable palate. But for example, we now serve canned tuna. And this is one of the dishes that was one of my most favorite dishes as a child. Coming back from school, we would drop to a takeaway sushi restaurant, sushi booth kind of thing, where it's canned tuna with Japanese mayonnaise, with slices of onion, and vinegared rice and nori, seaweed. It's a wrap, kind of thing. Japanese, it's a roll, kind of small thing. Absolutely tasty. And a lot of people say, Harrison, how can you be serving, not the otoro, the toro, the red fatty tuna or the tuna? I said, it's not possible to serve it. Or you can, but you see, the market's developing, right? So, okay, maybe 3 years from now, 5 years from now, we can serve a sort of tuna. But the grade of tuna right now that's available on a commercially viable and, shall we say, consistent basis is not there. And that's also the challenge right now of ingredients that we feel that I'm trying to change that and trying to bring in quality ingredients and help companies, SMEs, from Japan bring their products to India so that Indians can experience the difference. You can have a better product which might be a little bit marginally more expensive, but it's tastier, more delicious, gives you more happiness.
You see, so do you think that through your initiative and all that has been happening with Japanese food, it promotes a better cultural understanding between the two countries? Do you think of that?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, food is the ultimate entertainment. And food is a connector. Like if you do business or you have friends over or you have family over, what connects is food, right? Ultimately, food and drink. And without food and good food, how can you have a good conversation?
True.
So food is the ultimate connector, and I think Japanese food, yeah, everybody wants to have Japanese food. I have Singaporean friends of mine, the Deputy Consul General of Mumbai. Yeah, he says, yeah, I will go and take my colleague to have a Japanese sushi for lunch or something like that. That's actually quite incredible if you think about it.
Yes, that is. But we have talked about challenges, we have talked about the initial difficulties, but do tell me, what has been the more rewarding part of your role in India?
This is a very interesting question. If I would kind of answer in three ways. One is the people you meet. Interesting people like you. I've met some fascinating, interesting people. Secondly is the fact that India is such a diverse and huge country. Yesterday I was in Mumbai, but in the morning I was in Kolkata. That's 2,000 kilometers, right? You can do it. And
Yes.
there's so much diversity. There's so much diversity in the landscapes, the culture, the people, the food, everything. That's the joy of being in your country. It's so diverse. It's so amazing. It's so interesting, right? So people, places. And the third thing is that for me, the fact that I'm here after 17 years. You see, for me, business is about ultimately survivability. Survivability, right? There's a lot of friends of mine or people who entered the Indian market, who was here for 18 months, couldn't hack it, right? So the fact that I'm here with you today after 17 years and continue to meet interesting people, go to interesting places, eat interesting, food, and interact with people over sake or beer or Indian whiskey or whatever. That's a fascinating joy and an honor to be able to do that, and to able to continue to do that, say for the next 17 years, is not only a joy but a privilege, if I may say.
Yes, you have stuck it out longer for most people. But then, what would be your favorite Japanese dishes? And let's say, what would you recommend to somebody who's new to Japanese cuisine and would like to start out with something that is not, let's say, too extreme,
Yeah.
or let's say, a nice introduction
Yeah.
to Japanese food?
You see, my role, when the government asked me to do this role, there's only about 100 people around the world, and I'm the first in India to take on this role. It's obviously an honorary role, and it's a role that's actually not so easy because you're giving the role, but you have to think on your feet and do it. Now, there's two levels in a Japanese cuisine goodwill ambassador. One is the cuisine itself,
Yeah.
and one is the ingredients. A lot of people don't talk about the ingredients, right? So it's a combination of both. So you need both Japanese ingredients and Japanese cuisine. So Japanese food is very difficult. So let me you're non-veg, presumably?
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Do you like eggs?
I love eggs.
Okay. So I do this to everybody, and our friends like Ria Sen, who's a Bollywood actor. She was like, Harry-san, what do you mean? So over easy eggs,
Yes,
okay? No salt,
no salt.
Kikkoman soya sauce.
Okay.
That's it.
I
That will
tried
change
with your
your life.
recommendation.
That will change your life.
All right.
Like, see, you might think, man, what is he saying, right? Change your life. But see, delicious experiences, there's something that hits your heart, but most importantly, your soul.
Food
you
has
happy.
to go to your soul.
Yeah, 100%. And in the morning, when you wake up, getting ready, busy, over easy eggs, no salt, Kikkoman soy sauce. The umami kick, it's a pure delight. So that's a ingredient part. Cuisine part, I think most people start off with sushi because that's what people
Yes.
are. But it's very difficult to cook. I would suggest something like a tempura because people like it's a pakora, right?
Yeah, the deep frying.
Yes. And in fact, tempura was, came to Japan from Portugal, my understanding. So food obviously, crisscrosses the thing. But the way that you use tempura, you can eat it with a dip, with a soy-based dip called tempura, kind of, what is it called? A dip, which is a mixture of soy sauce, a bit of mirin, and all of that, and a little bit of radish. You probably have had it many times. Or you can have a matcha salt, if you may remember
Yes.
in a kaiseki restaurant.
Yeah.
That, So, tempuras are much easier to cook so that you can enjoy cooking tempura. You can have prawn tempura or veg tempura as well.
And it's the dipping sauce that makes the difference, actually.
You will enjoy that. So,
Yes.
you can have it either with matcha salt or with the, soy sauce based tempura dip.
I like it a little different. I like to put in some wasabi to give it a kick. I sort of think that gives it
but
a lot of...
I think food is so personal.
Food is very personal, yes.
And, you might like, hamburger. I might like pasta. It really depends, and it also depends on the mood, right? I mean,
Yes.
food is like, it's such an amazing thing, At least you can have it 3 times a day. And, if the average lifespan is 80 years, 100 years, can you imagine the joy that you can have 3 times a day? Okay, sleep you're doing once a day. Okay, you watch a movie, can you watch a movie every day? You know what I'm saying? That passion for food, and I think reasonably priced food, it doesn't have to be sushi also,
Yes, you need
Indian
to-
food, pasta, whatever. It's a joy.
Yeah, you need to live to eat rather than eat to live.
100%.
I personally believe that. But tell me something. Are there any? Every place goes through new trends. So are there any new trends that is coming up in culinary practices in Japan? And do you see some of those trends coming to India over a period of time? For example, people are now trying to interpret sushi in newer ways, different forms. So do you see some of that starting in Japan and coming to India?
So, if we talk about sushi, the trend of sushi, global trend, I think it actually started in the West with Californian rolls, if you remember.
Yes, California rolls.
Right? So, sushi in India came from the West. Didn't really come from the East. So it was like, it was from Japan, it went to the US, it was developed in the US, and from the West it came to India. So I think more and more, however, people want more authentic experiences with sushi, where it has to come from the origin, which is from the East. But however, over time, what has happened is 2 trends. One is that this westernized sushi is a global craze right now, but the authentic sushi is also in limited numbers, that I was talking to you about, in limited restaurants, limited cities, London, New York, Paris. Some of the finest Japanese meals of sushi can be had in London, Paris, New York, right? So this battle between authenticity and also innovative new dishes created with the confluence of cultures, this is always having interesting conversation. And there are purists who say, how can you have Californian sushi? Whereas the people who are having Californian sushi are saying, actually, I like authentic sushi. So that confluence is happening, that didn't exist before because people didn't know about it, maybe. If I look at more specifically about Japanese techniques, I think people are starting to realize that not doing so much to your food is actually a good thing. Okay, so like poaching or just boiling or just frying without oil or something like that. Simpler, more easier techniques of cooking. I think India can learn from that. Why are we maybe doing too much? And nothing negative. I love the Indian food. The richness, the deepness. Hours of cooking and all that. That's great. But maybe there is a trend of making things more simple. That is going back to what I'm saying about addition and subtraction. I think there's a lot of trends that I think, not only Indians, I think worldwide, a lot of people are adopting Japanese cooking techniques of simplicity and ease of cooking, maybe.
The subtraction of
Yes,
cooking.
yes.
But then, with all these trends and all, how do you see the future of Japanese food evolving in India?
So as I said, it's just the beginning. 17 years is just the beginning. And I think as more restaurateurs visit Japan, as more ingredients start to be properly imported into India, as more people are aware and people experiment more, I think the sky's the limit for Japanese food. Both fusion Japanese food, shall we say, and even the more authentic ones, which probably will come more and more restaurateurs, Indian or Japanese or even French or American entrepreneurs will come, and I think more and more Indians will be able to have a wider range of Japanese choices in India.
So, are there any resources or experiences you would recommend to people who are just getting started with Japanese food in India and went to?
I think it's a very good question. I think one is try to visit Japan,
Right.
if at all possible. It's not that expensive. I think that is one of the things I'm trying to change. Is that perception is very dangerous sometimes. World changes all the time. Now, if you look at the yen dollar, look at the exchange rate. If you look at how Japan is actually maybe giving a higher value for the dollar or the rupee, I think you realize that there is an opportunity to learn from Japan once you visit. But there are so many resources now on the internet, and I'm sure a lot of people can read books or see movies, or there's so much to learn that you can learn, I would think.
Right. So, as we wind up this podcast, would you like to share a message or an insight about the power of food in bringing our two very ancient cultures together? What would be your concluding thoughts on this?
It's a big, very good question. I think ultimately, good food, or shall we say great food, is about sharing. Obviously you can go in a restaurant and eat on your own, but I think better conversations and better fun experiences together with people is through food. And I think Indians can enjoy so much Japanese food. Japanese people can also enjoy Indian food. But I think there is so much scope for more delicious experiences, And I think for me, ingredients like kikkoman soy sauce, which is so fundamental to Japanese. You can imagine, cooking a Japanese meal without soy sauce. It's impossible,
True.
That I would hope that Japanese ingredients like kikkoman can be used in even Indian food to marinate things, to dip things, An Indian chef is like, I don't understand it, but ultimately it's about umami. If you want to enhance umami, use the best ingredients. So I think I want more Indians here in India to experiment with Japanese ingredients and enjoy their own cuisine, even with Japanese ingredients. And also go to Japan, travel far, open your heart and mind, enjoy, so that ultimately when you have that umami experience, you'll be happy.
Lovely message. Thank you, Harrison, for
Thank you
joining
so
us
much.
today. It was wonderful to have
An
you on
honor
the
to have
show.
you.
All this talk about sushi has made me hungry now.
Let's go.
Let's go. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。